Kevin Knuth, Gary Nolan, Jacques Delay, Bobby Loeb, Kevin Knuth, Gary Nolan, Jacques Delay.
Disclosure process? Absolutely. Disclosure process? Absolutely. Disclosure process? Absolutely. Disclosure process? Absolutely.
Diana Pasoka, Halputa, Diana Pasoka, Halputa, Diana Pasoka, Halputa, Diana Pasoka, Halputa.
Disclosure process? Absolutely. Disclosure process? Absolutely. Disclosure process? Absolutely. Disclosure process? Absolutely. This is not a joke. Like, none of this was a joke. This is not a joke. A joke. This is not a joke. Like, none of this was a joke. This is not a joke. A joke. Entertainment. 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 Entertainment.
What is catastrophic disclosure of catastrophic disclosure? And don't forget, what is catastrophic disclosure of catastrophic disclosure? And don't forget,
Controlled disclosure
of catastrophic,
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 controlled disclosure
of catastrophic, societal disruption,
catastrophic disclosure
catastrophic, catastrophic,
catastrophic disclosure
societal disruption,
catastrophic disclosure
catastrophic, catastrophic,
catastrophic disclosure
Catastrophic disclosure, 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 catastrophic disclosure.
Psychological, theological,
Psychological, philosophical, theological, psychological, theological, psychological, philosophical, theological, psychological, theological,
psychological, philosophical, theological,
theological.
Truthseekers, seeking the truth. A truth so bold it's hard to hold. Truthseekers, truthseekers, yeah. Place the cash, place the cash.
Greetings and salutations, old friends, and hopefully some new friends. I have a special announcement. Tonight is the very first night where we are broadcasting live on Instagram. So if you are an Instagram person, you can follow me on Instagram. Just be warned, this is an ancient account of mine. I have not really used Instagram very much. But considering it's an additional platform that we can live stream to, I dusted off my old account. It's at Renegade Magician on Instagram. And I'm checking in with the Instagram live stream, and it appears to be working. So tonight we are broadcasting live on the Truthseekers Facebook page, on my personal Facebook page, just at Stephen Cambion on Facebook, on our YouTube channel, on our Twitch channel, on our Rumble channel, and now, of course, also on our Instagram channel. Welcome one and all. We take a moment to recognize and welcome in the live chat. We've already got a great audience brewing here. So tonight we are going to be talking about this basement office sort of compilation. Now, I realize a few people messaged me and said, well, this isn't new. This is a bunch of basement office episodes stuck together. I still think this is an incredibly important work. If you haven't seen it yet, it's on the New York Post's YouTube channel. Someone, maybe Ardent Paranormal, can provide a link in the live chat. Otherwise, it is linked in the description of our video or podcast here. This is a video titled Spooky Hustlers, How Wacky UFO Activists and Crazy Ghost Hunters Duped Congress into Hunting UFOs. There are so few critical voices left in this sort of genre of subject matter that I think it's important when somebody does great work that it should be recognized. Now, as you may or may not be aware, instead of being recognized for doing good factual reporting, instead, Stephen Greenstreet is, you can check his Twitter threads. He is the victim of constant harassment from UFO true-believing zealots, cult members, and disclosure disciples who do not like him bursting their delusion bubbles. And for those unaware, this a lot of this modern interest or late interest in UFOs and aliens was really all began by Leslie Kean with a so-called bombshell New York Times article. But the important takeaway from that article was that it was all based on lies. The whole article was completely and totally factually wrong. And that, of course, was the article where we first heard about one Lou Elizondo, who I believe very strongly has been literally living a lie since 2017, pretending to be someone who was the director of a Pentagon UFO program. Now, it gets a little complicated, but essentially what we do know is that Lou Elizondo was only the Pentagon UFO program director in the land of make-believe, in his own imagination, maybe, and in the imagination of his delusional fans who refused to even accept the possibility that he lied to the New York Times. But I'm here to tell you, he lied to the New York Times. He was the principal source behind that story that was filled with fake facts, disinformation, misinformation, false facts, and completely made up horse shit. And that article has been cited by many, many people as having gotten them interested. Some people have argued with me that even though she got all the facts wrong, it was still really good for the world of UFOs because it got so many people interested. Well, I can lie to you about my unicorn hunting duties, but if it's all based on lies, it doesn't matter how many people I get interested in unicorns. If I tell you I ran a Pentagon program to hunt for unicorns, but I didn't, it doesn't matter how many people I get interested in unicorns if the whole story begins with a lie. And sadly, Lou Elizondo has been living a lie since at least 2017, maybe earlier, because apparently he's been telling people about his superpowers even before he was a public figure. That's right, Lou Elizondo claimed to have remote viewing superpowers. And by the way, there's more than one source to confirm that Lou Elizondo ran around telling people he had superpowers. But it's not just the lies in the New York Times. There's an awful lot more lies. And, one of the defenses that has been put forth for Lou Elizondo lying to the New York Times is that maybe they misunderstood him, or maybe, they got what he was saying wrong. And it's not his fault that they that they wrote completely and totally fake facts about his job history, which did not include running a Pentagon UFO program. I'm going to say it again. Lou Elizondo never ran a government UFO program. In his spare time, he looked into UFOs while he was a Pentagon employee, but he did not run an official Pentagon UFO program. And, we have various sources from the government. They've been adamant that he had no assigned responsibilities around UFOs in his role at the Pentagon. So what do we have here? Just somebody making up something, I believe, for personal profit. Lou Elizondo, by the way, has had various attempts at, getting rich quick, and nothing seemed to work, but UFOs sure did. And all he needed to do was lie through his teeth to an activist. Let's be clear, Leslie Kean, that's another issue we're going to be getting into tonight. Leslie Kean is Kean. She spells it Kean. You're supposed to say Kane. I always forget. Okay, Leslie Kean is not a real journalist. She's a UFO activist, and intentionally left out details in that article to spin it a certain way. And in this excellent piece, Spooky Hustlers, Stephen Greenstreet correctly points out that in her Showtime special, she admitted that she purposefully left out all the stuff about werewolves, dino beavers, poltergeists, and all the spooky skinwalker stuff because she wanted to add legitimacy to the UFO topic. And she knew if she included those things, people would laugh at her. And I believe they would have. This whole story would have been laughed off as wackadoo. But when you've got a UFO activist carefully manipulating the facts of the story, purposefully leaving things out. Remember, we've talked about this time and time again. How does the UFO hustle works? Well, one of the ways that it works is by the lie by omission. Just leave out anything that doesn't really support the story as being true or factual or real. Just don't give people all of the available information. And I might remind some of you that that's a tactic that's used by cults. Cults only give you some of the information. They never give you all the information, as evidenced by Scientology. You know, you could spend hundreds of thousands of dollars and never hear about, you know, the galactic overlord Xenu until you've already given them hundreds of thousands of dollars. These deceptive practices in use by Leslie Kean, Lou Elizondo, and others are also in use by literal cults to control their followings, to manipulate perceptions. And that, let's be clear, is what's happening here. People are being manipulated into believing certain things that are completely and totally false. And by the way, you know, I don't really just want to sit here and say, I told you so, but I was skeptical of Lou Elizondo's story from the start. I was one of the few people who was. Everybody else, hook, line, and sinker, just buy the lie. And while I realize that sometimes a pretty lie is much better than the ugly truth, I still think that the truth is worth having, even when it's ugly. Now, because of my criticism of Lou Elizondo, I have been cyberstalked, harassed, doxxed, my family threatened, my children attacked. People did all kinds of things. And you know what? That's another trait of a cult. You're not allowed to speak out against the cult leader. And back to Lou Elizondo, though, it's very important to point out that the people who offer these excuses for Lou Elizondo lying to the New York Times, he didn't just lie to the New York Times. He lied in virtually every interview. In every interview, hundreds of them that he did, right? He had an opportunity to clarify things, to set the record straight. Instead, he just sat there and let people call him the director of a Pentagon UFO program, when he knows he never was the director of a Pentagon UFO program. People can argue with me or show me a letter from some dead senator that was in on the $22 million that was scammed away from taxpayers to study werewolves and nonsense at Skinwalker Ranch. One of his political donors, who happened to own Skinwalker Ranch, got the no-bid contract, $22 million. Must be nice. No, that's not proof. That's not evidence. It's coming from a dead man who was in on scamming the public out of $22 million. Pardon me if I'll take the word of the Pentagon spokespeople who have repeatedly said Lou Elizondo had no assigned responsibilities around the UFOs. In his own complaint letter to the government, I believe that Lou Elizondo was upset because they were getting in the way of the grift, telling people he didn't run a Pentagon UFO program. So he files a complaint with the government, and in it, he admits it wasn't a program, it was more of an activity he did in his spare time. Well, that's a far cry from what was in the original New York Times article claiming that this man, Lou Elizondo, ran a $22 million funded Pentagon UFO program. And by the way, even that $22 million program, which he had nothing to do with, it ended before he became involved, apparently. Even that program had very little to do with UFOs, and it had more to do with poltergeists, dino beavers, shapeshifters, werewolves, smoking dog men, and more. So the government gave $22 million to some wackadoos to study all these things on Skinwalker Ranch. And by the way, they provided zero evidence of actual paranormal activity on Skinwalker Ranch for that $22 million. along comes Lou Elizondo after the program shut down, claiming that he was the new director of a program that was shut down. And, you know, I'm sorry, but to you dumb dickheads who want to keep attacking me saying, he did run a program, prove it. Let's put Lou Elizondo on a lie detector machine and ask him if he ran a Pentagon UFO program. I'd love to see the results of that polygraph, right? And even in his complaint, he showed what his so-called, what his so-called activities were. And they had nothing to do, very little things that he did surrounding UFOs. And, I guess maybe he worked at the Pentagon. He was bored. He was interested in UFOs. So he decided to look into UFOs or do some stuff related to UFOs in his spare time at his job. But, regardless of what you think, he lied to the New York Times. But he didn't just lie to the New York Times, because just to display a point here, I have one of his interviews where it's very clear that he was given how many opportunities was he given to clarify that he didn't run a funded program? How many opportunities was he given to set the record straight insofar as the original lies in the New York Times article? And every single time, Lou Elizondo chose to live the lie. And, the longer this goes on, the more, people make assumptions. Oh, you hate this guy or hate that guy. Hate's a very strong word. I don't really hate anybody, or I try not to. Most of me really I've kind of grown to have sympathy for this man, Lou Elizondo, because imagine the hellish existence. He has backed himself into a corner with these lies. And every day and every interview, he has to keep that lie going. He can't tell the truth now, because then everybody will say, hey, you've been lying for like 7 years, buddy. Right? So interesting. And this breakdown by Stephen Greenstreet, again, it's called Spooky Hustlers, is excellent, because this whole story is so convoluted, and the timeline is weird. It's very hard to follow what actually happened, and how was Leslie Kean and Ralph Blumenthal and Lou Elizondo able to deceive a prestigious news organization like the New York Times. But once you see this story by Stephen Greenstreet, you can understand how people could be fooled because of all of the distortions of facts and muddying the waters and lie by omission. And even in lies, there's sometimes a small nugget of truth. And I think really that's how they got away with it. But the lies didn't stop with him pretending to run a New York Times, pretending to run a Pentagon UFO program. They get worse and worse as time goes on. And I'm just going to share something with you. Here's something else he never really clarified, and I'd like to see proof of. And I'm sorry, but if he lied to the New York Times about running a Pentagon UFO program, and he's running around lying to people, telling people he has superpowers, he's a remote viewer, right? Okay. And there's various stories of him claiming to have saved his unit in Afghanistan by remote viewing the enemy or some nonsense. And this is from one article. And he says, so James Mattis, who is the Secretary of Defense, I had the honor and privilege to serve with him in combat. I'm just blown away by that. You were in a war with James Mattis? And when do generals with that many stars appear in active combat? The truth is, ask any military man. They're not in an active combat zone. They're in some air-conditioned trailer or office directing the real soldiers that are in the combat zone. But Lou Elizondo essentially claimed that he was served in combat with him. But it gets worse. Here he says, but my letter was intended to Secretary Mattis, his resignation letter he's talking about here. I think he deserved to know the truth. My familiarity with him, Secretary Mattis, has always been a man who wants more information, not less. And if anybody would break down those silos and stovepipes, he was a man who could do it. Believe me, I've seen that man in combat. Twice he's saying that he was in combat with him. But it gets worse because apparently Lou Elizondo likes to get drunk and tell war stories, I guess. And his war stories are hysterical because he tells Tom DeLonge some war story about him literally being in a combat zone and General Mattis comes and saves him. And here's Tom DeLonge. This is a transcript of an interview. This guy, Lou Elizondo, where he was placed and what he had access to, I don't want to go any deeper than that. But yeah, he's also fun because, you know, every once in a while, like I have knowledge of this stuff to know more than I'm supposed to. And every once in a while, I'll say something just to test the waters. And the eyebrows that go up on him are like, yeah, I always feel like I've won. So here's the story about Lou Elizondo tells Tom DeLonge a war story about being in combat with General Mattis. Mattis saved his life. Lou got pinned down in a huge machine gun fight, I guess in Afghanistan. And I just want to tell you, Lou Elizondo, you're a fucking liar. Show us your military records that prove you were ever in a huge machine gun fight in Afghanistan, you lying scumbag. Right? Okay. And he called for support and they said, there's nothing in the area. And he said, I looked at my friend, Lou said, we're going to die. We're dead. There were like 100 of them shooting and they pinned me at the rock. And he heard something on the radio and Mattis comes flying in like in one of those Bradley vehicles saying, and a big door flies down. Get him, boys. He's in a t-shirt. I am busy. I'll get to you in a second. He's on the automatic grenade launcher, just wiping people out. You know, Lou said he's on the ground just looking up and the guy is in the sunset kind of thing. Who the F is this guy? You know, and he saved their life. He saved Lou's life. You know, so Lou came from like really being in a war to moving up to a place where he had a lot of responsibility and a lot of sensitive things. And he's not boastful. He's not. He's seen too much depth. And listen, I just want to be the first person to tell you that multi-star generals are not in combat zones riding on tanks or Bradleys, and they don't run machine guns. This story is completely and totally fake. And the fact that Lou Elizondo, I mean, all he has to say if that story is fake is, I don't know where Tom DeLonge got that story, but I didn't say that or something. He never corrected the record. So, you know, it's not just the lies to the New York Times. And by the way, somebody that's willing to lie and pretend that they ran a Pentagon UFO program when they really didn't, they're going to tell other lies. And we have seen this time and time again. This Lou Elizondo just keeps lying through his teeth, making up stuff. I mean, he's free to prove me wrong, and I will apologize. Prove to me that you were in a firefight with General Mattis and he was on a Bradley shooting a grenade launcher at enemy soldiers, a multi-star general, right? It's so stupid and ludicrous that we even have to talk about this. But what the hell kind of a guy just lets somebody else tell that story and doesn't correct the record? And by the way, I haven't checked with General Mattis. Maybe he was in a t-shirt shooting grenade launchers at the Taliban and he saved Lou Elizondo when he was running a machine gun somewhere. I think this whole story is complete and total bull, but that's just me, right? Now, there is ample examples of Mr. Lou Elizondo not correcting the record. He's had hundreds of opportunities, right? He's had all these opportunities where people were asking him questions about running a Pentagon UFO program. And at every time somebody asked him those questions, he continued the lies that he told the New York Times. He never set the record straight. And I just wanted to cite fair use so we could show you one example of that. I'm going to take a moment to thank Matthew A.A., Grifters Profit by Wasting Time, and Gish Galloping. Well, thank you for your kindness, generosity, and support. We appreciate you appreciating us, and thank you for helping us. Of course, we thank everybody that helps us to praise the cash.
Praise the cash, praise the cash, praise the cash.
So I want to get into this. Thank you, Matthew. I want to get into this older interview because I just wanted to display to you. And remember, this is just one of 100 or more examples where he could have set the record straight. He could have told the truth and said, well, just to be clear, the New York Times got it wrong. By the time I was running this program, it was really just an activity or a volunteer effort. It wasn't an official program and it wasn't funded. He could have set the record straight. And at every turn, he made a choice to continue the lie. And hey, let's be clear too, it took a few years for the lies to come out. And what did he do during those few years? He ran around claiming to run a Pentagon UFO program completely and totally unchallenged. But even after it was revealed that he lied to the New York Times, he did not set the record straight. And we're just going to put our fair use banner up. This is a transformative work. We're educating the public. And we're going to be discussing the video. So that certainly covers this under fair use. And this is an interview from 5 years ago, but it will display to you that when an interview asks him about the Pentagon UFO program he runs, he doesn't correct the record. He just tells some stories, Just want to display that.
Now we will speak about, of course, the main news and the main role of yours during recent media wave, and that is the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program.
Yeah, and I just want to also point out that everybody clickbaited off of him being the former director of a Pentagon UFO program. Everybody that interviewed him included that title. So how many times has this lie been amplified, magnified, over and over and over again, hundreds of times? And at every time he could have said, maybe you shouldn't call me the former director of AATIP because I wasn't the director when it was funded or official, and it got shut down. And then I came in as a volunteer to try to keep it going or something. And by the way, I wouldn't fault him if he came out from the very beginning of this and told the truth and said, hey, there's a $22 million funded Pentagon UFO program. It got shut down, but I thought it was an important issue. So I volunteered my spare time at the Pentagon to keep the effort to investigating UFOs going. I would respect him. I would say, oh, yeah, okay. It sounds like you were passionate about this subject, but to come and just lie through your teeth so that you can profit. And let's be clear, this guy's been filling his pockets with UFO dollars every chance he got for years now. What has it been? 7 years he's been telling us I ran a Pentagon UFO program lie? He didn't. According to the Pentagon, he didn't. He had no assigned responsibilities. So here the interview asks him, the person doing the interview asks him about being the director of this program. Let's listen to what he says.
That DoD program was described in historic New York Times article from December 16, 2017. I guess the name itself describes the mandate in general terms, but maybe you can expand on that. What was the meaning of that program and what was the mandate in actual sense?
Sure. So I think your summation is absolutely correct. Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program was established to do just that, identify any threats. I think there's been some confusion recently. Some folks had said advanced airborne. It was never airborne. It was advanced aerospace.
Yeah, there was some detail in this Spooky Hustlers piece by Stephen Greenstreet. By the way, I'm just making my comments as brief as I can before we get into that piece. So if you're here to see my commentary or thoughts on that, we're getting to it. But interesting, he says it was established to deal with aerial threats. No, the program was established to investigate spooky paranormal things at Skinwalker Ranch. Maybe UFOs too, but no, it wasn't established for that. So there's another lie. The lie, see, here's the problem with living off of a lie. Lou Elizondo told one huge lie to start his career. And now he has to just keep lying to support that original huge lie. And it gets worse and worse, friends.
So these are potentially objects that are both in our atmosphere and maybe not in our atmosphere that are maneuvering in such a way that they don't fit a common profile of what we know to be typical type of aircraft, whether they be drones, whether they be missiles, whether they be airplanes. These are objects that are defying the traditional profile of something we would normally consider to be an aircraft of some sort. And so as a result, the Department of Defense takes seriously anything that it cannot identify positively.
I'm sure they do take that seriously, but they have, the Air Force, they have NORAD. They didn't need Lou Elizondo, whose job had nothing to do with UFOs, claiming that he's running the program investigating these strange objects. You have NORAD for that. They have resources to identify unidentified aircraft over our skies. They didn't need him.
Have to presume it can be a threat until it is proven it is not a threat. And so that was the purpose of the program, was to identify these anomalies, these phenomena that did not fit easily into a category of or a profile that we know of.
And just to be clear, none of Lou Elizondo's bosses at the Pentagon, his real bosses, gave him that mandate. No one gave him that title. He just took the title for himself. Hey, I'm the new director of this program that got shut down a while ago that was studying werewolves and vampires, I guess, and poltergeists and portals and dino beavers and spooky ghost stories from Skinwalker Ranch. They shut that program down because it was completely and totally wackadoo. And I just appointed myself the director of the program, and I'm going to continue it in my spare time. But none of his bosses told him to go look for aerial threats. That wasn't his job at the Pentagon. None of his bosses told him to go investigate anything to do with UFOs. He just took it upon himself to do it. That's a stretch, right? But in the New York Times, he's depicted as the director of a $22 million program. No, that's not what his job was, right? He was a pencil pusher at the Pentagon.
There are some media reports that I could see about the timeline of the project. I mean, for me, the timeline is clear because I watched all the media pieces that...
he watched the interviewer watched all the media pieces. And who was the primary source of the information in those media pieces that this person formed their opinion on? Lou Elizondo, right? And here, this interview is going to ask him about the timeline of the AATIP program. Another opportunity for Lou Elizondo to come clean and tell the truth about the real timeline of what happened. Oh, the $22 million got pulled and the program got shut down after just a year or two because it was embarrassing because they were, studying werewolves at the spooky ranch, right? He didn't do that. This interviewer is going to ask him about the timeline of the program he ran. Perfect opportunity to clarify things. Let's see if he does it or if he just lives a lie again.
I was able to collect. Still, it would be good to clear that up for the listeners because there are some contradicting articles on that note. Maybe you can tell us when the program was formed initially, when you became the formal director.
Sure.
How the program's budget was affected through the years, and especially what was happening after 2012 with the program.
Sure. So, Giuliano, the program started in 2007. In 2007, it was a bipartisan effort, which is something the media, I think, has missed here.
Three whole senators secured the Senator Reid, the senator from Hawaii, and one other secured the $22 million in funding.
Which was, in this country, we have the two major parties, the Democrats and the Republicans. In this particular case, it was Senator Harry Reid, along with Senator Stevens, who is Republican, and Senator Inouye. All three of them are veterans, along with the support of Senator John Glenn, who's an astronaut, and all of them have served their country very honorably. And so through various reporting that they had, in fact, Stevens in as a pilot reported being chased by something, by a phenomenon. So these are individuals who are absolutely heroes for our country, and they are reporting that they believe there is something out there that we need to look at. So the program was established as a bipartisan effort.
Yeah, there's something out there like werewolves and poltergeists, and that's what they did with the money, Lou Elizondo. Notice there's no mention of the werewolves and the poltergeists, right? And the smoking dog men and the dino beavers.
It was then sent to one of the defense agencies within the Department of Defense. There was an open bid.
This is a complete and total lie, too. There was never an open bid. Nobody bid on the contract except for Bigelow. He was just handed the contract. There was no open bid.
Anybody could bid for the contract.
Nobody bid for the contract except for Bob Bigelow.
And it turned out that Bigelow Aerospace won the contract. Keep in mind,
it's just a coincidence that he gave tens of thousands of dollars to Senator Harry Reid's campaign. Then he gets a sweetheart deal, no bid contract for $22 million to study werewolves and poltergeists at a ranch that he already owns. Why are we giving Bob Bigelow, a man who's a billionaire, $22 million to study his own ranch? The whole thing is shady. The whole thing is corrupt as hell.
Selected by Reid. This was an independent internal process by the Defense Intelligence Agency for this contract. It was DIA who chose who had the contract, not Senator Reid.
Yeah, they chose the only bidder. The only bidder was Bob Bigelow. Why was there no other bidders? Nobody else could investigate werewolves at Skinwalker Ranch for $22 million? Only a guy who gave a whole bunch of money to Senator Reid's campaign?
So I think that's an important detail that gets lost. And then in 2008, I was asked to come on board by the former program manager to provide counterintelligence support within this portfolio.
Yeah, and there's conflicting statements because he has tweeted and said he had nothing to do with the AAWSAP program. Remember, 2007, it's the AAWSAP program. AATIP would later be a nickname they would use to try to hide this wacky program studying werewolves, dino beavers, poltergeists, and more, including UFOs, from other members of the Congress and the Senate. They didn't want people to know that they're wasting $22 million chasing werewolves around a spooky ranch. So they come up with this AATIP name that I think Lou Elizondo just took it. But yeah.
I did not have any idea what this program was about. I had several meetings with people until I realized more or less what this was about. And then in 2010, when the last program manager was going into a new assignment, I was asked to take over the program. And I subsequently accepted it. And from 2010 till roughly 3.5 months ago, I ran the AATIP program. Now,
yeah, it's pretty interesting. So that's pretty interesting that he's saying he was asked in 2010 to take over the program. No, it got shut down. And Lou Elizondo is not an honest person because he, just like Leslie Kean, he leaves out all the stuff about the dino beavers and all of this stuff. It's absolutely ridiculous. Oh, and look at that. UFO John Doe with a very kind and generous $49.99 says, Merry Christmas. Hope all is well. Haven't been on much. You're to blame. You snapped me out of the UFO grifting bad actors. Applying logic, reasoning, picking apart the BS, easier to not be drawn into the mental cult madness. Keep exposing the frauds. Disclosure my arse. Well, thank you, UFO John Doe, MVP of Super Chats, for your kindness, generosity, and support, and helping us to praise the cash.
Praise the cash, praise the cash, praise the cash.
I cannot, UFO John Doe, praise the cash as hard as Lou Elizondo, because I'm not going to lie about running a Pentagon UFO program I never ran. But we thank you, all of you. I would rather have an honest dollar than a dishonest million, to be honest with you. And I do thank all of you for your kindness, generosity, and support. So here we see the perfect example that Lou Elizondo is given opportunities to clarify that the program has no funding, to clarify that he wasn't an official director, that the program was shut down. And, you know, I don't understand. I just don't understand how you can constantly lie to people every day of your life. But this is where we're at, and this is where we find ourselves. So I did have some stuff about, I have some just notes here about journalistic ethics, because here's the thing, all of these lies, and literally these major lies, including a man claiming that he ran a $22 million Pentagon UFO program that he was the director of, then saying I had nothing to do with AAWSAP. Oh, I ran AATIP, and what AATIP was a nickname for it. There was an entire multi-million-dollar scam, I believe, started off on these lies. And the lies came from completely and totally bad reporting. And this bad reporting from Leslie Kean starts and helps advertise and promote the scam, which would turn into TTSA. You remember that, where they claimed that they were going to build their own UFO. They were going to build a spaceship with a revolutionary power source that would change the world. And while they were soliciting public donations, they were telling people that Lou Elizondo, one of their board members who was a member of TTSA, ran a Pentagon UFO program. Turns out that's a completely and totally false statement that they made while they're soliciting investor money. Now, I'm not an expert in these matters, but according to the SEC, I do know that if you're soliciting public investment, you're not allowed to lie to investors. Was telling everybody you're going to build a spaceship a lie? Was telling everybody that your board member ran a Pentagon UFO program that he never actually ran? He had no official assigned responsibilities, and it was not an official UFO program? Was it a lie? Or perhaps some would call it simply an exaggeration or a misstatement of events, a conflation of different things. No, they didn't say our board member, he was a real estate guy for the Pentagon and an intelligence guy, and he had nothing to do with UFOs officially. But while he worked at the Pentagon in his spare time, he looked into UFOs, and he's one of our board members. That would have been the truth. They didn't tell people the truth while they were taking public investment. They lied to people, in my opinion. But again, I'm not a lawyer. I don't work for the SEC. I don't know if you're allowed to stretch the truth that far. And these are matters for law enforcement to take up. And the SEC, which, govern what people can or can't do ethically, morally, and legally while soliciting public investment. But it's enough to say that an entire multi-million-dollar scam started off on these lies and the bad reporting that came from Leslie Kean. She starts these lies, and she helps them advertise and promote what will become something that has been described as a, quote, techno scam, unquote. And so I wonder if bad reporting is enough to start all of these lies. And one of the problems was that everybody did what I call clickbait copy-paste journalism. Nobody fact-checked the original article. They just copied and pasted the pertinent details, changed it around a little bit, and reposted it. So what we get, and Stephen Greenstreet details this in his piece, Spooky Hustlers, is hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of media outlets amplify the lie, magnify the lies, co-sign the lies, until everybody just believes that this man ran a $22 million official Pentagon UFO program. And he didn't. So I wonder if bad reporting is like Leslie Kean's is enough to start and advertise and promote a multi-million-dollar scam, is good reporting enough to destroy the scam? And sadly, I think that all of this damage really, really has been done, because you can't unring the bell. It's so hard. To this day, people are still describing Lou Elizondo as the director of a Pentagon UFO program, even though that has been hotly contested and debated, and I believe shown to be a work of fiction. This man never ran an official $22 million Pentagon UFO program as was originally reported. And so Lou Elizondo is in a living hell of lies right now. That's what he lives. He lives in a world that is just run by lies. He can't tell the truth now because then people are going to say, why did you lie for 7 years? Why did you misrepresent what your assigned responsibilities at the Pentagon were? Why didn't you tell the truth from the very beginning? So he's got to just keep this lie going. And there's a reason that his book keeps getting delayed. And there's a reason that he's not doing public appearances. And I truly believe it's because he knows that the judgment day for him is coming. He can't risk media appearances because somebody's going to ask him questions about the multi-million-dollar TTSA techno scam and whether it was ethical or moral or even legal for TTSA to collect investor donations, investor funds, and tell people to invest in their company while Lou Elizondo was living a lie of running a $22 million official Pentagon UFO program that he never ran. One of these interviewers is going to ask him about this whole situation, and he can't risk that. He's got to get that book deal done and the dollars rolling. And as much as, he was good at figuring out, when he did that whole podcast media tour, he did not do any real shows that would ask him real questions. He avoided shows like mine, Dark Journalist, or anybody who would call him out on this misrepresentation of his actual assigned responsibilities within the Pentagon, who would call him out on the TTSA, quote, techno scam, unquote. And by the way, I'm not the person that came up with that term. Other people have described TTSA as a techno scam. So I wondered, is good reporting like Stephen Greenstreet did with this Spooky Hustlers piece enough to dispel all these lies? And honestly, I think most of the damage is done, and it's an uphill battle to correct the record and say, no, all you people that are believing that New York Times articles, you got it wrong. You got it all wrong. So we've still got our fair use banner up. We're going to sample just some of this. The link to this piece is in the description. And while I understand that somebody messaged me and said, well, this is just multiple episodes that he did previously glued together. But I think there's a reason why Stephen Greenstreet did this. Number one, I think he's got new episodes of The Basement Office that are about ready to launch. And number two, I think he wants to sort of get people caught up. And by the way, I do want to compliment him. Like I said, this whole story is so complicated and so convoluted and hard to explain. I've done a piss poor job, quite honestly, trying to do it myself. He does an excellent job at breaking down the timeline of events and what really happened versus what these liar, scammer, grifters all lied to everybody about. And so I'm so overjoyed and delighted and excited that there is a factually accurate timeline here of this is what really happened. And so kudos to Stephen Greenstreet. Excellent job. And for the rest of my life, I don't have to try to explain this convoluted story. I can clip this out and just show people this is the truth of this whole situation. And here's how Elizondo and Leslie Kean, sold a complete and total lie to the American public. And the tragedy is that so many, this is a perfect example of media failure in the United States, because everybody just copied and pasted the lie and they magnified it and co-signed it and amplified the lie. This should be a case study in disinformation or misinformation and how it can, go viral and go wild on the internet if left unchecked. And unfortunately, it wasn't corrected until years later. It took years to figure out this convoluted mess, this that old saying, oh, what a tangled web we weave. It's a tangled web of lies, deceptions, distortions. But he did an excellent job in putting this together. We're going to sample some of this here. I'm citing fair use. This is a transformative work. We're educating the public and critiquing the video that we're sharing. This is fair use.
AAWSAP spent only 1 year investigating UFOs, ghosts, and goblins before the Pentagon started to pull the plug. In 2009, after reviewing AAWSAP's reports, the Pentagon states that it was determined the reports were of limited value.
Yeah, and one of the reasons they were of limited value is because they were piss poor data collectors. In the Skinwalker books, they talk about all these paranormal events, and somebody's like, why didn't you take a picture of this stuff? Oh, there wasn't time. There wasn't time. We had $22 million to spend on cameras. We didn't have time to get good cameras and take pictures of this shit, but we got plenty of spooky stories. Spooky stories have no value. Forget about limited value.
In the December 2017 Politico article, a congressional staffer is quoted as saying, "There was really nothing there that we could justify using taxpayer money, and that even Harry Reid agreed it was not worth continuing." The Pentagon decided not to renew AAWSAP's funding and shut it down completely by 2012.
Yeah, so here's the other thing. This figure, $22 million, is even a lie. Because although these senators may have secured $22 million in funding, I'd love to see the accounting. Did they run through $22 million in funding in 1 year? Where'd the rest of that money go? Now, there have been various people who claimed, oh no, we only got 11 million. And there was another 11 million left when they canceled the program. I've reached out to government people for comment. Nobody ever gets back to me. I'm just a podcaster. Oh, and by the way, that's something else I wanted to mention. I may have a major announcement about some press credentials here that may help me get my phone calls returned and my emails answered a little better. So even saying it was a $22 million program is a complete and total. They did, unless they blew through $22 million in a year. I'd like to figure out how they did that. Yeah.
Stating that the program was terminated in 2012 due to lack of real progress and concerns about the viability of the program, and that it was determined that there were other higher priority issues that merited funding. James Lakatsky says he spent the next few years trying to get new funding to resurrect the dead program and to keep the paranormal investigations going, but he was unsuccessful.
Yeah, so the original director of the real program that was funded to the tune of 22 million, but it was canceled after a year, he tried to secure more funding. And this is where it gets interesting. Lou Elizondo is claiming that he's running a $22 million program, while James Lakatsky, the guy who was actually running the original program that was funded, is still trying to get the funding, while Lou Elizondo is claiming he's running it and he's the director of it, while it was an unofficial program and unfunded. So all we get is lies, distortions, misrepresentations from Lou Elizondo and crew.
Finally, Lakatsky says he retired in 2016.
And that is the mostly untold story about how $22 million in taxpayer money was spent on a wacky paranormal funhouse.
Oh,
and it appears that at the time, the Pentagon had no idea this silly, spooky stuff was even happening. How is that possible? Well,
yeah. And so these wacky paranormal crazies, they covered it up. They covered up what they were doing actively, and then they admitted they tried to cover it up. This is great stuff, guys.
Lakatsky, the Pentagon director of the program, says that for security reasons, he was hiding AAWSAP's activities from officials at the Pentagon.
People in my own office, they didn't know what we were doing. They had no idea that I was running Skinwalker Ranch. They had no idea whatsoever.
And so, you know, all these people, these UFO nutters that cry about no congressional oversight. Well, there was no congressional oversight of this $22 million pork project. They actively hid it from other members of the Senate and Congress and people in the Pentagon because they knew that, you know, If people found out that they were spending $22 million chasing werewolves, people would have a problem with that.
And was Harry Reid aware of the ghosts and goblins? Well, I guess it depends on which version of his story you want to believe. In 2018, in an interview with New York Magazine,
This is
Reid
where it gets
denied
interesting.
ever being briefed or updated on any of AAWSAP's activities. Ever. But then in 2021, Reid told George Knapp that not only was he aware of AAWSAP's activities at Skinwalker Ranch, but that he was potentially planning to go to the ranch himself.
I remember getting a call from you while you're in the well of the Senate, and you asked about Skinwalker Ranch, whether your staff.
So again, like I said, there's an awful lot of lies, distortions, just conflations. Like, getting to the truth of this story is like mission impossible with these group of grifters and liars.
Should go there and whether they'd be safe. Did you consider sending some of your people to the ranch, and did you ever consider going there yourself?
I considered it, but based on information I got from you and others, I decided not to go.
Oh yeah, you might pick up a poltergeist if you go there.
It would also draw attention to the ranch and the program, right? If you went there, you'd have to tell somebody about it.
That's for sure.
So see, they actively kept what they were doing from everybody else in the Pentagon.
And Senator Reid would eventually fully endorse this whole crazy story 2 months before his death by writing the foreword to Lakatsky's book. In it, he calls out the New York Times. The December 2017 New York Times story has done a tremendous amount of good, but unfortunately, it has also muddied the waters.
Yeah. So there's your disclosure advocate, Lou Elizondo, and transparency advocate. They want transparency and truth from the government, but they lie to the New York Times and pretend they ran a program they never ran. It's pretty ridiculous.
It left the government's AAWSAP program completely out of the narrative.
Yeah, why wasn't any of this stuff reported in that bombshell 2017 New York Times article? How did a story about a program called AAWSAP, which investigated UFOs, werewolves, ghosts, goblins, become a story about a program called AATIP, which only investigated UFOs? Well, Leslie Kean is a longtime UFO believer and UFO researcher, writing UFO stories going back decades.
She also lived with, was it Bud Hopkins? I always forget. I think she lived with Bud Hopkins, who was an alien abduction guy.
She wrote a best-selling book on UFOs in 2010, and it was Leslie Kean who approached Ralph Blumenthal to pitch the big UFO story to the New York Times. She was one of the authors of the New York Times article. In a recent Showtime documentary...
Yeah, and here's where it's get good. This is where you know that this whole story is based... she constructed it based on her own personal beliefs. This is not, an impartial journalist reporting the facts of the story. This is a UFO activist who has an agenda and actively manipulated the information in the story to suit her agenda.
Leslie Kean was asked why stories about alleged encounters with alien creatures were not included in her 2017 New York Times article. And she replied that her specific goal with that article was to give UFOs credibility. So she avoided reporting on some things.
I chose not to focus on it because the angle that I was taking in my reporting was to try to get credibility for the subject. And I knew that that was not the way to go.
Yeah, telling people the truth about the werewolves, the dino beavers, the smoking dog men, the portals, the ghosts, the goblins, that would make people think this lady's a wackadoo. So she actively left it out of the story on purpose.
That was not the first step in terms of getting people to accept this.
So an author of the original New York Times article, the article that was the first domino to fall in all of this, says she wrote the article with a specific angle in mind. Get people to accept UFOs as real. That sounds like the goal of an activist, not a journalist. But I see where she's coming from, because could you imagine if that first New York Times article had talked about werewolves and poltergeists and giant dino beavers? It would have been laughed at and ridiculed and used as a prime example of the government wasting taxpayer money.
Exactly.
But because all of that wasn't mentioned and only unidentified flying objects were, that New York Times article continues to validate UFOs with not just your average citizen, but also with members of Congress.
Since the New York Times story came out in December 2017, it's politically viable for elected officials to come forward and say, I support this kind of research.
Yeah, but they can't come forward and say, I support research into werewolves, goblins, ghosts, poltergeists, and whatever, right?
But if you, that's for researching things in the sky that might be a threat to
George
national
Knapp even
security.
agrees. George Knapp agrees with Stephen Greenstreet that if they told everybody the truth about what the program was really about, everybody would say, this is wacky. Why are you wasting money on
Aviation
this?
safety. It's another matter for a politician to say, I agree with spending money to investigate places like Skinwalker Ranch with spooky stories of boogeymen and werewolves. No politician is going to fund poltergeist research or looking into werewolves. They'd be crucified.
So how much of the actual story did the original New York Times article report?
Almost none of the whole story, yeah.
How much of the actual story is currently influencing Congress?
The scope of the AAWSAP program was gigantic compared to the small sliver of information that was reported from via the New York Times. And so the purpose of the book was really to set the record straight. I think the book really encapsulates about 97% of AAWSAP, whereas the 3% was what the New York Times article had described.
So all these lawmakers are basing their opinions on 3% of the story, not on, and they don't know about the other 97% of the story.
3%. According to those actually in charge of the actual program, the original New York Times article about the program only contains 3% of the actual story. 97% wasn't included. So let's talk about the 3% that was.
Yeah, and before we get to that, I just want to announce, apparently Instagram has disconnected our live stream. They have an issue right now where the streams end after 1 hour. So my streaming software is working with them to resolve the issue, and I apologize for that. We want to thank Patrick Sheehan, longtime show supporter for kind and generous $9.99 super sticker. Thank you for your kindness, generosity, and support. Longtime show supporter, Patrick Sheehan, we thank you for helping us.
Raise the cash, raise the cash, raise the cash.
So I apologize to our Instagram viewers. Just come on over to our YouTube channel. Just go on over to YouTube, hit the search bar, put Truthseekers, one word in the search bar. Look for me, the strange guy with sunglasses. Go to our channel. We're live streaming there or on my Twitter feed at Stephen Cambian right now. We thank you, Patrick Sheehan. We thank you, UFO John Doe. And we thank you, Matthew A. We thank all of you for your kindness, and you Patreon supporters and YouTube channel members. By the way, today I spent an hour and a half on the phone asking questions about David Wilcox's shady aerospace company in Niagara Falls, New York. And I'll be posting that to Patreon and the YouTube channel members only here after tonight's broadcast. But for now, let's continue with this, and I'll be bringing you that story another time. But the short version of that story is that nobody from the Niagara local government wants to talk to me about David Wilcox's shady aerospace company. I made something like 26 calls, and I got not one call back. But I recorded the calls. I did get a few people on the phone, most of which were directing me to somebody else. But I'm going to share that all with you guys who are members and Patreon supporters. Oh. 1 second. I did not mirror this one, so let me just get past the commercial here and we'll go right back to it. I apologize for that. Someday, well, the thing is, the stream wasn't, I could have mirrored it, but it would have been extremely low quality.
They reported that the name of the program was AATIP, and it was led by a guy named Lou Elizondo. So first, where the heck did the name AATIP come from? In his book,
Yeah, and this is where it gets good. So we can see that Lou Elizondo cherry-picked the data to invent his story of running a program that he never ran officially.
Program director James Lakatsky writes, AATIP was a made-up substitute name to describe AAWSAP. A made-up name? So he's saying that AATIP
didn't even exist. That AATIP itself was a nickname, and
Oh,
only
no,
a nickname
Lou,
to
you
the
lied to
AAWSAP
everybody.
program. So they were the
Oh.
exact same thing. AATIP was just a nickname, AAWSAP being the program.
The program was nicknamed Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, AATIP. People have had trouble trying to get documents out of the Pentagon by saying they want all documents in AATIP, and they have a hard time because that wasn't actually the name of the program.
Yeah, and I believe that this was done intentionally to prevent people from finding out the truth about Lou Elizondo's lies through FOIA requests.
The top.
Because, by the way, if Lou Elizondo really did run an official Pentagon UFO program for all that time he claimed, there would be a mountain of paperwork. Guess what there isn't? No matter what, you could ask them for the AAWSAP paperwork, the AATIP paperwork, any paperwork related to Lou Elizondo's fake Pentagon UFO program. There's no documents, almost none.
Name there is the actual name of the program, but AATIP was the nickname that it went by.
and even Harry Reid and the Pentagon have previously agreed
Exactly, UFO John.
Reid
They work
stated
together.
in an
You're
interview
right.
that AATIP and AAWSAP should be considered together. When researcher Roger
Smoking
Glassell
Dog Men,
asked
too.
about the names
Yeah.
AATIP and AAWSAP, a Pentagon spokeswoman replied that they were the same program and that AAWSAP was just an alternative name for AATIP. So how did AATIP become a nickname for AAWSAP? Well,
You're
remember
right,
how
John Doe.
Lakatsky said he
It's
was
ridiculous.
hiding AAWSAP from other officials at the Pentagon? How, according to Lakatsky, they had no idea whatsoever about AAWSAP's activities?
They had no idea.
In their book, the authors say Senator Reid and those working at Skinwalker Ranch were worried that AAWSAP's activities would eventually come to light. As such, Senator Reid submitted a request that AAWSAP be given top secret special access status.
Yeah, and he
which,
was going to do
if
that to
approved,
hide what they were doing.
would have officially limited how many people had access and control over the program. Here is
You gotta love guys that are arguing that the government needs to be transparent about UFOs and aliens, actively trying to cover up their activities when they have $22 million to spend investigating UFOs and aliens. The hypocrisy here is just ridiculous.
is the special access request letter submitted by Senator Harry Reid to Deputy Secretary of Defense William Lynn in 2009. But instead of saying AAWSAP, the actual program name, Reid used the nickname AATIP. But Reid's plan to protect AAWSAP apparently backfired.
Yeah, and this is great. So they try to cover up the program so that nobody gets access to it, so they can keep it going, I guess. But people leaked that letter all over the Pentagon.
His request was denied, and his letter was widely distributed within the Pentagon. The cat was out of the bag.
Suddenly, the rest of the Pentagon, which had no idea that this program was underway, had no idea. Suddenly, everyone knows about it, and they start asking questions. Gosh, what if this gets out that we're involved in study of UFOs and ghosts and creatures?
So two things appear to have happened here. One, Reid's letter was the first time many within the Pentagon had even heard about this program.
And again, all these people want UFO and alien transparency. They're running a program and they're keeping the details of that program from all the other senators and congressmen. They're actively trying to cover that program up. Does this sound like people that really want disclosure and transparency, or does this sound like slimy, shady people? I think it sounds like slimy, shady people.
And Reid's letter used the nickname AATIP. So according to those who were previously in the dark about all this, AATIP was the name of the program. 2, the Pentagon didn't want this embarrassing story spreading outside the Pentagon. They didn't want it in the press, and they didn't want speeches in Congress about government waste. So they moved to shut it all down.
Could you imagine having to be Senator Reid and explain why you spent $22 million in taxpayer money chasing werewolves on a spooky ranch? You know, this is a real problem.
New Yorker quotes a Pentagon official saying, "People worried that if all this came out, that the government was spending money on this will be a bad story." The Pentagon pulled AAWSAP's funding in 2010, and by 2012, the funding had completely dried up and AAWSAP was officially dead. But despite the program being shut down, Lou Elizondo, who had become interested in the UFO aspects of AAWSAP, claims he kept the effort going at the Pentagon. According to James Lakatsky, Elizondo adopted and appropriated the name AATIP to describe this new, small, unfunded, and unofficial effort. Lakatsky has only done a handful of interviews since going public. Here's a revelatory clip from one of them on the Coast to Coast radio show where he specifically addresses this.
The AATIP name was created for a
Hey,
letter
Mr.
that
Elizondo's in the live
Reid sent
chat.
in trying to establish
Don't lie in my
DOD
live chat.
SAP for
Lou,
our
the
program
liar,
for
Elizondo.
various reasons. And Lou used that name when he, and I guess it had to be in the time frame of 2012, and he used the name AATIP. Nothing wrong with that. I mean, that's fine. But there was a difference between the two programs. Ours had $22 million in funding. His had zero. But he did.
So at the very least, he lied about running a $22 million program. The money was gone by the time Lou Elizondo decided he was the new imaginary director of a shutdown program that no longer existed.
Did his thing, we did ours. But I can say that we were the only game in town.
So what did Lou Elizondo actually do? You know, the guy who everyone refers to as the director of AATIP, the Pentagon UFO program.
Oh man, the lies just come crashing down. But yeah, everybody just called him the Pentagon UFO program director.
Luis Elizondo, former director of the Pentagon's Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program.
Luis Elizondo ran the Advanced Aviation Threat.
How do you go on all those news channels and just let people lie? You know, this, like I said, this runs deep. This is lies so deep that it's corrosive to the soul. That's why I've sort of changed my tune. And most of me is very sympathetic for this man that started this whole career with one huge lie. And he's just got to keep letting people around him lie. He's got to let his supporters lie. And, you know, we've talked in detail about the whole doxing crew and the group of people that he, you know, doesn't stop at least from harassing people that tell people the truth about his lies. How corrosive to the soul is living a complete and total lie for some 7 or more years.
Threat Identification Program.
The man who ran that secret program, Luis Elizondo.
Yeah, it wasn't a secret program. It was a shutdown program. It wasn't an official program. It wasn't a funded program. It was a UFO program in the land of make-believe.
Thank you for joining us.
Was he even involved in the official Pentagon program at all? In the 221-page book about the Pentagon UFO
Oh, here's where it gets good. We hear about his superpowers.
program, Elizondo appears one time. That's a bit strange, right? One time. At a 2009 dinner, sitting at a table with members of AAWSAP and BASS, where the authors claim he was telling war stories about his psychic powers.
There you have it, right there, right in black and white, in a book. Lou Elizondo was at some dinner with all these guys, and he was telling everybody about his remote viewing superpowers, right? War stories, right?
That's it. Well, Elizondo himself has stated multiple times on the record that he had nothing to do with AAWSAP, including this emphatic tweet.
Yeah, and here's where it gets, here's just proof positive of the lies, because it can't be both. In this tweet, he says, I was never a part of AAWSAP.
Says, It's been brought to my attention that despite my constant assertion in the media about my non-involvement in AAWSAP, some are under the false impression that I was part of it. For the record, again and again, I was not part of AAWSAP.
Elizondo instead says he was in charge of the Pentagon's AATIP program, which I think we've established probably didn't even exist.
It didn't
Insiders
exist.
say it was not an official program. It was a completely separate small initiative, a small unofficial effort, not a program as the P in AATIP suggests, but more in his spare time, when his normal day job allowed, he looked for UFOs. There are two pieces of documentation that further supports this. One is an email from the year 2020, released via the Freedom of Information Act to John Greenwald.
Yeah, and God bless John Greenwald, because listen, in order to get through all these lies, fabrications, and distortions of the timeline and real events, it takes a monumental effort. And John from the Black Vault has been instrumental in clearing the lies out of the public sphere and providing some clarity of what really and actually happened.
In it, Elizondo is challenging the Pentagon press office regarding their statements denying his role with AATIP. Elizondo concedes that his AATIP could be defined more.
Call it an activity versus a program, you will. So it wasn't a program. It wasn't a program. It was an activity he did in his spare time.
More as simply an activity versus an actual program. The second is an annual Pentagon evaluation of Elizondo from the year 2016.
Yeah, and in his actual evaluation, look at his goals. His goals have nothing to do with UFOs, nothing at all to do with UFOs. His officially assigned responsibilities, nothing to do with UFOs. None of his bosses asked him to do anything surrounding UFOs. It wasn't in any of his mission goals or in any of his evaluations. There was no mention of anything to do with UFOs. There's no paperwork of him doing anything with UFOs in the government. If you were really investigating UFOs for the government for years, there'd be a mountain of paperwork. Guess what? There's not. There's not any paperwork about him investigating UFOs. None.
Outlines all his officially assigned responsibilities at the Pentagon, none of which have to do with UFOs or anything called AATIP. So with all that in mind, let's look again at the Pentagon's official statement regarding Elizondo.
Lou Elizondo had no assigned responsibilities for AATIP. More black and white. The man never ran an official Pentagon UFO program. He was not the director of that official program that was originally called AAWSAP. Full stop. He lied to the New York Times, in my opinion.
That appears to be a true statement. In April 2022, Brian Bender, the author...
And here's where it gets interesting, because some people who were journalists came out against Lou Elizondo and claimed that they were purposefully misled by these people.
Of the original 2017 Politico article, tweeted that he now feels like he was purposely misled by numerous sources on what AATIP really was and wasn't. In response to a Twitter user stating, seems clear that they wanted to gloss over the paranormal stuff, which is like where all the money really went. Bender replied, 100%. They buried the origin story because they were afraid it would be perceived as an utter waste of taxpayer money. It would have also further soured the whole effort, given the Bigelow connection to Harry Reid. It was a pork project to investigate voodoo that morphed into UFOs.
And regarding myself and all the Basement Office episodes I've made about AATIP and Elizondo, I was apparently wrong. It wasn't intentional, but in an honest attempt to report the truth about the Pentagon UFO program, I too feel like I was purposely misled.
And I just want to take a moment to recognize, because, for those aware, one of the hardest things that any reporter or journalist can do is admit I got the story wrong. And to his credit, and I know he gets a lot of shit for this. Do you know Greenstreet used to be like a hero to all the UFO dumb dickhead believers that believed all these lies? When he was just repeating the lies that he was being told by sources, including Lou Elizondo, he was a hero to the UFO true believers. And isn't that interesting that you could be a hero for repeating or reporting complete and total lies, but suddenly when you pierce through the veil of those lies, when you peel back those layers of deception that these deceptive, shady people are using to sell the story and profit from it, once you peel back those layers of deception and actually report the truth, now Stephen Greenstreet is a big villain to the UFO cause. And he is one of the enemies of disclosure, I've heard him called. And I just want to take a moment to recognize it takes a big man to say, hey, I got the story wrong. I'm sorry. I meant well. I did my best. I was misled by sources, purposefully misled. That's multiple big journalists. Now, Brian Bender writes for Politico, Stephen Greenstreet, New York Post reporter here. These aren't small media outlets saying that they were purposefully misled. And by the way, where's the New York Times to say we were purposefully misled by this guy and Leslie Kean into completely and totally inaccurately reporting the entire story that kicked off all of this shit? They didn't. So I just want to take a moment to recognize, good for Stephen Greenstreet for having the balls to admit when you make a mistake. We've done a very good job here. We try to, have facts in hand before putting stream in gear or mouth in gear. But certainly there was things that I've gotten wrong, and I've been willing equally to say, I got the story wrong. Here's why. Here's the corrections or whatever. So to his credit, and a great personal sacrifice and risk, by the way, do you know when Stephen Greenstreet was sort of in the believer camp and just reporting what these less than ethical, less than moral scumbags were telling reporters, when he was just repeating what they were saying, he got huge numbers with his series, The Basement Office. And do you know today, while this incredible work of actual good, great, well-sourced reporting was playing, 350 live viewers in the entire world tuned in to watch this. Now, granted, I guess some of that it was low because people knew it was sort of replays or jammed together previous episodes. But when he was doing it the other way, he would have thousands and thousands of live viewers for a premiere. And honestly, that just kind of makes me sad that if you're going to do this the right way, you're going to get penalized. If you do it the clickbait garbage peddled way, you're going to get rewarded. And if you do it the honest way and tell people the actual truth of what really happened with all of this, you get penalized because people prefer the pretty lie to the ugly truth.
As for Elizondo, he, along with other former members of Tom DeLonge's To the Stars Academy, have been lobbying Congress to spend more money on UFOs. They say the original New York Times article continues to influence congressional leaders, since many of the paranormal aspects weren't included in that story. Chris Mellon, the guy who once stood in front of a gigantic photo of...
You gotta love this. He's standing in front of a gigantic photo of a number 1 Mylar balloon, the kind, if your baby turns 1 year old, you buy one of those 1 balloons. That's what that is, that he's standing behind, claiming defied the laws of physics, a goddamn balloon. These are your disclosure heroes. These idiots that can't tell the difference between a goddamn balloon and an alien spaceship doing 40,000 miles an hour.
Of a blurry party balloon admits that telling Congress about AAWSAP would be counterproductive.
Their efforts appear to have paid off.
Yeah, and isn't it interesting? They want government disclosure and government transparency, but they're allowed to lie to members of the government or withhold facts and pertinent information to members of the government in order to get their agenda. through. That shows you these are not honest people. They're manipulating people. They are actively manipulating people.
Congressional leaders like Senators Kirsten Gillibrand and Marco Rubio helped create a new UFO program at the Pentagon. The new program is called the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, or AARO. And another domino falls.
Yeah, and I thought this editing was great. Stephen Greenstreet does a good job at bringing in he used this analogy of dominoes falling. Like, how does a group of UFO wackadoos all get together and manipulate the government so well? It's just a great story, I think. Either I just can't believe that these wackadoos were able to manipulate members of Congress and the Senate, and now we've got new wackadoos manipulating them.
I'm going to leave you with one more thing. Lou Elizondo said he had nothing to do with AAWSAP. Nothing to do with the werewolves and ghosts and goblins. Nothing to do with AAWSAP. However, in May 2021, Elizondo filed a complaint with the Department of Defense Inspector General's office. Written in his own words.
Yeah, I wonder where Grush got the idea to file complaints, right?
Signed with his signature, Elizondo's complaint accuses some at the Pentagon of smearing his reputation by releasing statements denying his involvement as director of AATIP. In his complaint, which I obtained a copy of, he outlines in detail each and every role he claims to have had from 2008 to 2017.
Yeah, and here's where it gets interesting.
In 2008, he says he joined James Lakatsky on AAWSAP. His role was, in his words, AAWSAP's Chief of Counterintelligence and Security. From 2008 to 2010,
All right, and they're fine. It's okay, unless you really need to do something about that.
Elizondo describes his various duties with AAWSAP, including reviewing incoming reports from BASS. In April 2010, he writes, Dr. Lakatsky approached me and asked if I would consider assuming the role of AAWSAP and AATIP director. And in May 2010, he says his new role was director for AATIP and AAWSAP.
So how did he have no role at all in AAWSAP? And here he's saying he was asked to be the new director of AATIP and AAWSAP. This is going to be a problem for him. And another domino falls.
I think we should stop and ask ourselves, how did we get here? What stories brought us here? Who told those stories? Are we closer to the truth?
And here's an excellent point.
Or are we further away? Perhaps to find the answer, instead of waiting for the next domino to drop, maybe there's only one thing left to do.
Great editing.
A true story will stand the test of time.
Call it an activity, not a program, if you will.
Change one thing, and it can look completely different, like something else altogether. If you went back and refollowed the evidence, would the story sound the same?
Yeah, what if everybody could go back and know that he made up being a director of a Pentagon UFO program? What if everybody could, go back and get the truth from the very beginning? Would anybody care about Lou Elizondo, who looked for UFOs in his spare time while doing his normal, boring day job that had that had nothing to do with actual UFOs? And would they have been able to, in my opinion, would they have been able to allegedly, we'll use that word, scam investors out of millions of dollars, claiming that this guy ran a Pentagon UFO program when he never did? Would people have invested if they said, hey, this guy in his spare time, he like, you know, looked for UFOs when he wasn't busy while he was working at the Pentagon. You know, the whole Stephen Greenstreet is perfect in this analysis here. None of this would have happened if Lou Elizondo and Leslie Kean didn't lie to the New York Times. TTSA wouldn't have been able to collect all that money, I don't think. I mean, hindsight's always 20/20, and it's hard to know for sure. But this entire story would, I believe, it would come crashing down if people knew the truth from the very beginning.
Would it look the same? Would you see something different, something new, something that was always right there, right in front of you? You are here.
Yeah.
At the beginning.
Over the next few episodes, we will go back to re-examine and reassess the other fantastic claims of this UFO story. The only question is, where will this new journey take us?
Yeah, and I think this was the first episode where he was really super critical.
Let's begin.
Yeah, so this is as far as we're going to go in the video. Again, the video is in the description of the video. I highly recommend. I know it's a long watch, but I think that this whole piece, it perfectly displays all of the levels of deception and layers of deception and obfuscation and lie by omission and muddying the waters that all of these UFO grifters and paranormal pushers, all the methods that they use. Because after this, he gets into the Skinwalker scam. And I'm sorry, I'm calling it a scam. You know, how many millions of dollars have been generated from Skinwalker stories? Where's the evidence of that? There is none, you know? So, yeah. Steve Long is here and says, meanwhile, DeLong still thinks all of humanity would thank him for bringing paradigm-changing truth, or should thank him. Yeah. Patrick Sheehan says, I miss Richard Doty lying to our faces. I don't know why, but these headphones are starting to bug me, and I don't really need them for the rest of the broadcast. We'll be taking comments and questions from the live chat, so please put comments and questions for me in all capital letters. And we will be going through your comments and questions. You can ask me about tonight's presentation or anything else. Yeah, Lou Elizondo says you're not looking in the right places. There's a bunch of fake accounts. I think a fake Jeremy Corbell called me an idiot earlier. And that's okay, because the real Jeremy Corbell would probably do that, you know. Bob Lazar is also here. I don't know why. Yeah, look, the fake Jeremy Corbell. Those were not flares. That was an alien spaceship. All my videos are of alien spaceships, straight from sources deep within. You debunkers are just CIA plants. Yeah, and Bob Lazar is also here. Jeremy, you broke the news on the triangle UFO seen through the night scoop. Very good UFO footage, but nothing compared to my sport model flying footage at 360p, 10 frames a second. Yeah, did you know? I swear Bob Lazar did some animations on an Amiga computer, and I was a huge fan of Amiga computers. So Bob Lazar also says, Jeremy is currently at Knapp's house looking for my Cloud Chamber 115 test, which shows light being bent. Yeah, absolutely. So comments or questions for me, please put them in all capital letters. The Sixth Sense says, anyhow, he's finally come to his senses, so that's a good thing, I guess. You know, I got to say, I didn't like Stephen Greenstreet's reporting when I felt like he wasn't doing it the right way. But since he did his sort of 180 and is now critically examining the claims being made, I think he does an excellent job. And I can't help, as an aspiring documentary film producer myself, to be extremely jealous of his editing skills and resources. A lot of people, he posted one time an image of one episode of The Basement Office, and there was just like hundreds, it looked like thousands of pieces that he uses to put these broadcasts together. And you know, my own paltry skills pretty pale in comparison. Isn't it interesting that we're always you know, envious of talents that we are lacking in? And you know, I'm slowly getting better editing over the years, but it's been a slow slog, right? Lou Elizondo says, I'm opening a chain of burger places soon. Yeah, that sounds like that sounds like something that Lou Elizondo would get into next. You know, UFO fries, right? Can you get some Element 115 special sauce with that? I think, right? So comments or questions for me, please put them in all capital letters. I apologize for the problem with the Instagram broadcast. I was not aware that there was an issue, or we would have just waited until they got the issue over with. But I want to thank each and every one of you. I see there's a whole bunch of people following me on Instagram, and I've never had a lot of followers over there because I don't post on Instagram, but we're going to start. And going forward, please do follow me on Instagram at Renegade Magician, one word. I will be posting images to that, all from the show. So going forward, that Instagram will be the show's Instagram. Trying to figure out if I could change that username to just Stephen Cambion or Truthseekers. I don't think I can, and it's a hassle to start a new account. You'd have to delete the old one, start a new one. I'm not going to do that. So just follow me there, and please ignore the strange user ID at Renegade Magician on Instagram. But going forward, when I'm working on something here, whether it's masks or new set pieces or whatever I'm working on here, I'm going to begin to post more on Instagram. I'm going to try to post, you know, 3 or 4 things a week there. And that those images won't be anywhere else. So it's a good way for me to use that account and sort of document the show. Paul Corey says, Steve, what's the best proof of ET you have seen? Well, that's a very difficult question because most of the so-called evidence of aliens that I've seen turns out to be hoaxes, fake shit, or nonsense. But I am very, I still hold on to some things, and I'm still very interested in the Roswell event. I know that's kind of old and hokey, I guess, because you know, Roswell is one of those stories that it really, what happened there, it depends on who you believe. But if you were to believe some of the researchers like Don Schmidt and Kevin Randall and Stanton Friedman and others, there's a lot of evidence that people saw some kind of bodies about that. Yeah, Patrick Sheehan, Stephen, create a documentary about how put-offs influence on the UFO phenomenon. I have actually thought of that because he's one of the original OG grifters, and he was involved with the TTSA, quote, techno scam, unquote, as people have characterized it. He's been involved in wacky research efforts to create psychic spies. He was a high-level Scientologist and more. It's pretty interesting. Lou Elizondo says you can order burgers at his new place with telepathy, right? Have I ever tried CE5? No, but I did buy the app, and I planned on making a video of me trying to summon alien spaceships. And I keep saying I'm going to do that. It's kind of cold outside. I'll probably wait till spring on that because I got to meditate, right? And I got to be outside. But I do have a telescope now that allows you to connect your phone to take videos and pictures of whatever you're viewing on the telescope. So I'm going to set up my telescope and my phone, and we're going to meditate up some aliens and UFOs, right? Red and Blue 323 says, if the UFO grift doesn't pan out, Luke can become a stage magician under the name Zondo the Magnificent. Maybe I could get him some gigs, right? Yes, we did. Alien Critter is asking, Stephen, did you read the news report about an Australian fisherman claiming to have found MH370? Yes, we read it on our last live broadcast. Just go in our YouTube and we covered that, and we read it live on air, actually. That was kind of a breaking story. Somebody sent me right when we were on air. We read it on air. So it'd be interesting to see if that pans out. And then what are the MH370 grifters going to do if they found the plane? Are they going to claim cover up and still keep pushing this, right? Art and Paranormal reminding people, please put all questions and comments for Stephen in all capital letters. And we take a moment to recognize and thank our one and only chat room moderator, head moderator, only moderator, but it works, Art and Paranormal, who's also a YouTube channel member here. And you too can become a YouTube channel member. By the way, for anybody who's curious, you get the same things on Patreon that you do on the YouTube channel membership. You just get some extra goodies on YouTube. Why fools? It's good to see you back. New chat room participant. Ashton will lose his mind. Yeah. Paul Corey says, dude, I take walks every night for 3 years with intent and I never see anything. Well, you're doing it wrong. That's the excuses. Did you know that Stephen Greer claims that if you buy his CE5 app and you don't see the aliens, it's because you didn't do it right. That's the Scientology talking point too. Scientology always works when done correctly. They blame the user, right? Montauk Jerkoff is here. Thanks you for being a member, and thank you for the $1.99 super chat, and says the CE5 app allows Greer to see you naked. Well, that's a scary thought that I really don't want to think about, but thank you for your kindness, generosity, and support. Praise the cash, bitches!
Praise the cash, praise the cash, praise the cash.
All right. We have some other comments and questions here. Project Unity dork sees them all the time. Says Plan B. Yeah, he's a big fan of Stephen Greed. Yeah. Jeremy Corbell reminding everybody that George Knapp is his mentor. Yes. Bob Lazar says, I am currently paying Mick West to say that MH370 UFO footage is fake because it needs to stay secret as this technology doesn't exist. Art of Paranormal reminding people how you could join our Patreon. John C. Spadavaccia says, Ashton already lost his mind. Dude, his hosting live streams and spending half the time clicking on usernames and banning them. Yeah, well, that'll just show you, John, that this guy's not an honest researcher. Because if you need to ban everybody that disagrees with you, by the way, we don't ban anybody here unless you're really, really just belligerent and nasty to people or something in the live chat. Everybody's welcome here. I did. I timed out that one idiot from the space idiot. You know, he called me a grifter or something like that. And he's running an entire lab off of crowdfunding and other people's money. And he's calling me. So we timed him out because he was warned several times. But we don't ban people. You know how many times people come in here and make fun of me? And by the way, yes, I am aware. A couple of people sent me, like, I'm supposed to be upset because somebody that makes memes that licks the assholes of UFO grifting scumbags, right? They love to worship the lying, grifting scumbags, but anybody like Stephen Greenstreet or John from the Black Vault or me who are actually doing real work here and peeling back the layers of deception and showing people the truth, we're the enemies of disclosure. So they like to make a meme making fun of my appearance. Do you know why they have to do that, John? Because they can't make fun of the factual reporting that we do here. And it upsets them. Like, oh, you revealed that Lou Elizondo never ran a Pentagon program, and he's my hero. If your hero is a liar that lives a lie every day of his life, I feel sorry for you. But, you know, people can attack my appearance. It shows me that they can't attack my reporting. They can't attack the shows that we do here, which are by and large, I go out of my way to make sure that we're bringing people actual facts and evidence and truth. Yes, I have, but largely I saw something when I was young. I thought for a time that it was a big deal. Most of me thinks that I just saw something I can't explain now. And I tend to keep my personal experience private now. I once did a show talking about it. I took it down because I was getting all these questions and people making assumptions and things. But, you know, I saw something that I couldn't explain that I thought for a long time was an alien spaceship. But given the proximity to an air base where I saw this thing, most of me thinks it was just some sort of aircraft that I misidentified or didn't understand. And as far as orbs, I think most of orbs are dust. And, you know, all these people that go nuts over orbs, I go, you know, it's dust, dude, relax, right? Yeah, he even makes chat subscriber only for 30 minutes. So you have to listen to that clown for 30 minutes before you can even say anything at all. Yeah, this is if you have to ban people from speaking in your live chat, it's because you don't want people telling people this is bullshit and here's why. It's pretty clear, right? Linda Moulton Hale has the same in her chat. Yeah, you know who else? Christina Gomer and Jimmy Church mute people and ban people in their live chat because they don't like people asking questions like, hey, Christina Gomer, hey, Jimmy Church, can I dig up your dead grandmom and rip her bones apart and glue her back together with some plaster looking like E.T. so I can make some money off of an alien scam too? Right? Because if you're okay with people doing that to other people's dead relatives with this Mexican alien scam, then you should be okay with people digging up your dead grandmom, right? I couldn't say that in the live chat. Why? Because I am muted there. Because they're intellectual weaklings and cowards, and they need an echo chamber. They can't have somebody coming in and letting people know that they're selling lies, right? Yeah. Speaking of that, there's a new music video. Yeah, we have a musical guest tonight. We have a musical guest, and it's Simon Fly, my favorite music video producer, because all the music videos that he produces are about UFO grifters, and you gotta love that, and UFO scammers. So you gotta love that. So we're going to take the show's not over, but there's a new music video. And since somebody mentioned that clown, this is the perfect time to shout out to Simon Fly. And by the way, Simon, no, I'm not posting. We're not streaming on that one. You know, we're not doing that tonight so that I can play your videos. Yeah. So he's got a new video just about blocking some clown that can't withstand debate because he's an intellectual weakling and a coward who works for the biggest fraud scam artists in UFO land and defends them constantly. He's got to ban people too, because, you know, you can't have people asking real questions or calling him out for supporting hoaxer scammers like Third Phase and Moon. It is what it is. So the musical guest for tonight will be Simon Fly, with his excellent new music video featuring the goofy one. It's called Blocked, and we'll be right back to answer more of your comments or questions. Don't go anywhere. The show's not over. This is just a musical guest portion of our show this evening. And as far as Simon Fly, just put Simon Fly in the YouTube search bar. You'll find him. He's the first result, I believe. If you put Simon space Fly, you'll find all his music videos. Many of you enjoy them here. Go on over and subscribe to him. Let's check out one of his latest music videos. This one's called Blocked.
I blocked somebody named Simon Fly. I can't see anything Simon Fly says. I blocked somebody named Simon Fly. I can't see anything Simon Fly says. Because we always fight, he always starts shit. 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 But I just blocked him. 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 Block somebody named Simon Fly. I can't see anything Simon Fly says. I blocked somebody named Simon Fly. I can't see anything Simon Flysing. Because we always fight, we always start shit. Because we always fight, we always start shit. Because we always fight, we always start shit. Because we always fight.
Simon Fly.
Simon
From me.
I love Simon Fly music videos. It's a guilty pleasure of mine. Every time he has a new one, by the way, we played one to start tonight's broadcast. I can't wait to check it out. He does a great job. And, but back to that subject, if you need to block everybody that's asking questions, maybe you ought to be questioning, how truthful you are as a show host or how resilient you are. And, we've had our fair share. Trolls can come in the chat. They say shit about me. I get called Grandma's Boy and Kylo Ren. They always attack my appearance. Do you know why? Because I'm right. I'm correct in my reporting. And they don't have anything else, so they're going to just go for my appearance. Okay, there's something about anybody's appearance you can make fun of, but that's pretty juvenile, right? It's pretty high school and juvenile and stupid. Like, if that's the best you got, okay. But I've developed quite a thick skin. I realize you're going to say things that people don't like. And when you're talking about delusional UFO true believer cult members, they're not going to like when you peel back these layers of deception. And let's talk about that for a minute. If you live in a delusional fantasy world where somebody telling you the truth about a certain individual or a certain story is enough to trigger you, then maybe instead of attacking that person, you ought to go get some counseling, right? I always joke, I offer to pay for cult deprogramming for some of these people, because it's incredible how many of these people lose their goddamn minds, right? When you tell them that something is fake, even if there's overwhelming evidence, some of these people don't believe you. Mr. Ree, yeah, it's the winter solstice today. 2023 will peak tonight. This year, the Earth seeds will peak on the night of December 21st through the early morning of December 22nd. Is it the winter solstice? I thought I heard somebody say it was. Yeah, winter solstice 2023. We'll find out. Yeah, that's tonight, Thursday, December 21st, 10:27 p.m. is the winter solstice. So we just passed the winter solstice. We've just passed the peak, Mystery. Mystery, you and me peak together, but don't tell my wife, okay? I don't want to get in any trouble. It's the winter solstice, for those unaware. Why, oh, why, you fools? That's funny, but I'm not going to share it on the screen. I hope you understand. But that is funny. Yeah, and I could definitely see that. I could definitely see him having something like that. Why I had previously mentioned to you that we don't need to hear that here. Yeah, just calm down on the crazy comments like that, because YouTube doesn't like it when you say things like that in the live chat. Yeah, it's a mod issue. He mentioned it a few streams back. I don't block people that have an opinion. Well, anybody can ask Arden Paranormal. Arden Paranormal is great at doing what she does to help us here in the live chat, and has her and I have a good rapport, and she knows that, like, she doesn't ban people or mute people or anything unless she really, really has to. We like people to have their say here. And isn't it better to hang out with a bunch of people that let you have an opinion? And by the way, we've got some real true believers here, and they like to argue and tell me I'm wrong about things, and that's fine. That's the way it should be. Yeah, John Boyle says this chat got out of hand. Yeah, I don't know. William Runner, I was on Lou Reviews one night and his moderator kicked me from the chat and I was agreeing with Lou. Moderators have to be monitored. We have great ones here though at Art and Paranormal. Yeah, Art and Paranormal does a great job. I heard somebody say best mod on YouTube because Art and Paranormal is not just a mod here, a mod many places, right? Montauk Jo says, John Lear and I split roasted gray alien that was wearing a big blonde wig and fishnets. That sounds like something John Lear would do. Bob Lazar says, John Lear was a great friend and an even better pilot, like his father before him. Yeah, I missed John Lear. He was a crazy son of a bitch, but I liked him. You know, he talked about all kinds of wacky stuff, though. There's 100,000 people living on the moon, and they're lying to us. The Saturn is a habitable atmosphere, and so is Venus. There's millions of people up there in a secret program. Yeah, The Sixth Sense says some channels just love to take out opposition, something that may hurt their revenue. Yeah, I don't know if it's. Yeah, I don't really know about the revenue situation, but I just don't like the. I'm a free speech advocate. I always have been my whole life. So it would be pretty hypocritical of me to start banning and deleting people that disagree with me here. Part of the reason that we do well here is because people know that we have a free speech zone. And by the way, this is a perfect example, and I don't want to dwell on things, but one of the moderators, previous moderators here, left in a huff and a hissy fit because I wouldn't ban and delete Sixth Sense from our channel here or from the Discord. But the Sixth Sense has been here literally since my very first YouTube live stream and has helped out many different times and ways. And by the way, the Sixth Sense was a moderator, and the reason he couldn't be muted or deleted is because he was a moderator. So I don't miss the mod wars, because when we had a bunch of moderators here, they were always fighting with each other, right? Yeah, Scallywag says, you get pilled on by their sycophants if you criticize, right? Al Warrior is banned on another channel that we don't mention here. Bob Lazar, it's true there are people on the moon. John told me that before he died. It was briefings at S4 day 001. I saw an alien more than once. The time through the window was a dummy, not an alien. Yeah, and Art and Paranormal reminding everybody questions in all capital letters, right? This I agree with you. Paul Corey says, Steve, there are infinite amount of planets in space. There's got to be life out there. I truly, in my heart of hearts, believe that there's intelligent life somewhere out there in the universe besides us. Because if not, it would be just an incredibly tremendous waste of space. And even if people that don't believe in God and everything are right, that everything's just a roll of the dice. And on our planet, all the dice rolls came out good. We were in the Goldilocks zone. There was liquid water here. Things were able to, we had the right amino acids to create life, and life was able to form and evolve here. Well, if it happened here, it has to have happened elsewhere in the universe. And I follow space news. I don't know if you're aware, Paul, but there's an incredible amount of exoplanets being discovered. Remember when they first started discovering and confirming the first few exoplanets? It was so slow. Now it's like they just keep finding more planets and more planets and more planets and more planets. I think that I'm hopeful that within my lifetime, and hopefully yours, Paul, life on another exoplanet will be verified 100%. I don't know what form that life will take. It could be aquatic life. Remember, different planets, different distances from the sun, different chemical makeup of the body of the planet. But I hope too. I don't just believe that we will discover life elsewhere. I hope we will in my lifetime. And I don't know if we discovered life on other planets tomorrow, would that really change anything in our lives? I don't know. I think it will change our philosophical outlook on our place in the universe. And I think it would change the way we feel as a human race, maybe. I don't know that it would change. I still have to get up every day. I still have to go to work. I still have to make breakfast. I have to make dinner for my kids every day. But something about finding out that there's life on other planets, I think, would enrich the human experience for most people, including me. Al Warrior, you get blocked by the biggest dickheads. You know that? Yeah, it's like, oh yeah. I hate to do this, but I'm going to do it. No, you know what? I'll do it another time. You reminded me of his co-host that got caught with a bunch of kids in a playlist dancing, little girls. Remember that guy? Yeah, slime ball, scuzzbag, dirtball, right? Yeah, and for those unaware, I guess we could talk for a few minutes about this. This cult-like behavior around these liars and scammers, it's really, really incredible to me. They get caught lying, grifting, and scamming, and people call them out on it, and suddenly the people telling the truth are now the enemies of disclosure. What people are doing when they do that, what they're really saying is, you're fucking up my delusional alien fantasy where all this is real. And I want to live in that delusional fantasy where all of this is real. And you're ruining my ability with your truth and your facts and your evidence and your verification that these people are lying to me. You're ruining that delusional alien fantasy land for me. So I'm going to attack you, vilify you, hate you. I'll post stupid memes like a 10-year-old making fun of your appearance, or I'll dox you, or I'll threaten your family. In my case, I literally even had my children threatened, right? And my wife was threatened by name in my very own live chat. It is so ridiculous. FAP is here. Great to see you again. Yeah, I'm always happy when somebody comes back. When they come to the first show, I'm always like, I wonder if they're going to be back. And YOY was here for the first time recently and are back. Yes, exoplanets are being discovered so quickly. Even Corey Good fake briefings can't keep up. Yes, and they're into the light work. Yeah, these are light workers. They're running around threatening people's wives because people are telling the truth about the grifts and the scams and the hustle, right? And I think this title of Stephen Greenstreet's is incredibly appropriate. Spooky hustlers. That's what they are. They're hustlers of spooky stories, right? Very cultish behavior. Yeah. Archaic Revival is here and says it would be great to really get some answers about the universe. Holding down the Twitch chat. Yeah. Art and Paranormal reminding everybody to check out our Discord server. Yeah, so I feel like we've done our due diligence here. And we're going to, oh, you know what? I have to find something to play us out with, since we're allowed tonight to play these music videos of Simon Flies. We're going to see if we can't play us out with one. Oh, yeah, I found one. Great. So we've done our due diligence, but I have another announcement. Tomorrow night at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, we'll be live here again, and we're doing a special panel show. It will be open topics, open discussion, and birthday celebration, because I believe today, actually, is Mr. Ian, our announcer, Mr. Ian. It's his birthday today. I believe he's turning 53. Happy birthday, Mr. Ian, the man with the golden voice. But tomorrow night, we're going to have a special celebration open panel show. Anybody can join the panel show. There's just a few rules. One is wear headphones, and two is wear clothes. YouTube and other streaming platforms don't like nudity. So please don't show up and show any of your pink parts. I don't really, we don't need to see that. And we're going to have an open discussion, I guess, really just open topics. So anybody can join, anybody can be a part of the festivities. I hope you will be too. So what can I say? We have done our due diligence. So that's all I got for you, friends. We'll be back tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, with an open panel show. For those that aren't aware of what that means tomorrow night, don't just listen to the show. Don't just watch the show. Get out your webcam, your microphone, your headphones, and join the show. Be a part of the show tomorrow night. Everybody's welcome to join. We just ask you to be respectful of the other panel members. We haven't done an open panel in a while. They tend to be a little chaotic, but we'll see how it goes. And we'll be back tomorrow night at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to do that. And I hope you'll be with us to do it too. So that's all I got for you, friends. Until next time, my name is Stephen Cambian. Good night, and God bless all of you, especially one Lou Elizondo. I have come to sympathize with a man who has spent 7 years living a complete and total lie and has to do everything in his power to keep lying, to keep the lie going. For those of you who bought the lie, especially those of you who bought his lies and then attacked me over revealing those lies, I forgive you. And I hope that you come to the truth. I understand that a pretty lie is sometimes more attractive to people, especially when the truth is ugly, but it's still worth having. Good night, and God bless all of you.
Nonsense, 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 it's garbage science. Nonsense, 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 it's garbage science. Nonsense, 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 it's garbage science. Nonsense, 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 it's garbage science. Nonsense, 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 nonsense. Spheres, we have no evidence. Pyramids, we have no evidence. Cubes, we have no evidence. And cigars, we have no evidence. Spheres, we have no evidence. Pyramids, we have no evidence. Cubes, we have no evidence. And cigars, we have no evidence. Spheres, we have no evidence. Pyramids, we have no evidence. Cubes, we have no evidence. And cigars, we have no evidence. Spheres, we have no evidence. Pyramids, we have no evidence. Cubes, we have no evidence. And cigars, we have no evidence. 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 No evidence. We have no evidence, no evidence, no evidence, no evidence, 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 evidence.
Consciousness. I'm an intel guy. Consciousness. I'm an intel guy. If I called your mother a hooker. If I called your mother a hooker. Consciousness. I'm an intel guy. Consciousness. I'm an intel guy. If I called your mother a hooker. If I called your mother a hooker. Consciousness. I'm an intel guy. Consciousness. I'm an intel guy. If I called your mother a hooker. If I called your mother a hooker. I were to call your mother a prostitute.
slime ball in UFO land. Scammers, liars, and fraudsters. Scammers, liars, and fraudsters. Scammers, liars, and fraudsters. Scammers, liars, and fraudsters. Go on, take the money and run. 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 Take the money and run. Take the money and go on. Go on, take the money and run. Take the money and run. Take the money and go on.
Using consciousness, consciousness, using consciousness, consciousness, using consciousness, consciousness, using consciousness, 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 consciousness.
Mosul org, the Mosul org, the Mosul org, org, UFOs, metallic looking ball.
Praise God.
Metallic looking ball.
Praise God.
Nonsense. Nonsense.
The movement of the Spirit of God, the movement of the Spirit of God, the movement of the Spirit of God that has been prayed over.
Nonsense, 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 the debunkers. Nonsense. Nonsense, 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 the debunkers. Nonsense. Nonsense, 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 the debunkers. Nonsense. Nonsense, 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 the debunkers. Nonsense.
With flesh and blood.
Nonsense.
And don't you ever say I did. With flesh and blood.
Nonsense.
And don't you ever say I did. With flesh and blood.
Nonsense.
And don't you ever say I did. With flesh and blood.
Nonsense.
And don't you ever say I did. With flesh and blood.
Nonsense.
And don't you ever say I did. With flesh and blood.
Nonsense.
And don't you ever say I did. We wrestle not with flesh and blood, but principalities and power.